The subject is communism in the context of the fundamentalist modernist controversy. Certainly we've learned from our coursework that fundamentalists tended to be anti-communist, in fact sometimes vehemently so. Prominent fundamentalists like Amy McPherson and Billy Graham railed against communism, and their contention was that if America did not experience a true spiritual revival, then we would be susceptible to the false ideas like communism. We understood at that time that communism and Christianity represented two fundamentally different ways of looking at the world, and they could never be reconciled. Fundamentalists were very suspicious of evolution because evolution portrayed a vision of man that was very materialistic. And so likewise, fundamentalists were also suspicious of communism because, again, man was reduced down to just a matter of biology. And so we saw that connection. The question is, if the fundamentalists were anti-communist, then does it follow that the modernists were sympathetic to communism? Were they pro-communism? And the answer, in a word, is no. Prominent modernists spoke out against communism. I have a couple of examples. Fosdick, certainly not a socialist. He said, "Personally, I dread the thought of collectivism, which Russia represents, as I would dread the devil." And Reinhold Niebuhr, another modernist, he said, "We are embattled with a foe who embodies all the evils of a demonic religion." So even the modernists, with their watered-down version of what Christianity was, they understood that no matter what, it could not be reconciled to communism, that they were antithetical to one another. To illustrate this point, I want to tell you the story of Bishop Brown, who was an Episcopalian priest. He was tried for heresy because he did not believe in a historical Jesus or a personal God or a six-day creation or a literal heaven or hell, and he was kicked out of the Episcopal Church. He retained his title of a bishop, and of course he then started to dabble in communism, and he studied Marx and he studied Engels, and he came up with this idea that you have to reject Christianity and run to communism. So I found in the Toiler, a newspaper that was a Communist Party newspaper based out of Cleveland, Ohio, in the December 25th, 1920 edition, there's this ad. "Do you go to church? Have you friends who do? If so, you and they should read Communism and Christianism by Bishop William Montgomery Brown. It is not an attempt to reconcile scientific socialism and the Christian religion." No, because you can't. "But it is a call to Christians to discard their theological dogmas for Marxist communism." Even if your theological dogmas are watered down dogmas, stripped of the supernatural, devoid of biblical authority, you still have to discard them because they don't jive. At the same time that Bishop Brown published his book, which was, by the way, published by the Communist Party, a fellow by the name of Leslie Mason, who was a communist, he was speaking on this issue of whether Christianity and communism could be reconciled, and he ardently professed no, decidedly not. No one can be consistently both a Christian and a communist. And he says, if you have a question about it, I would send you to Bishop Brown's book, Communism and Christianism, because he maintains in his book that such a thing as a Christian socialist is trying to purge the socialist movement of its materialism. And you can't do that because materialism is at the very heart of what communism is. There's no such thing, really, as a Christian socialist. Trotsky wrote, "Religiousness is irreconcilable with the Marxian standpoint." They don't go together. That's the whole point. Even the modernists understood this. So in the midst of this era where the fundamentalists and the modernists were fighting just about everything, at least this one little piece of history they did agree on, that they didn't believe that communism could be reconciled to Christianity. Years later, there would be an effort to do this, to put Marxism and Christianity together into an unholy marriage of liberation theology. Many people think that it was developed by the Latin American Catholic Church, but in truth, we're learning that liberation theology was actually developed by the KGB in the 60s and the 70s, trying to woo Christians into communism. And some of us fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, unfortunately. But back in the 20s, we understood that there was such a thing as antithesis, that A is not non-A, that Christianity is not communism, and never should the two meet. and at least for a little while, the fundamentalists and the modernists agreed on that.